We all know that police officers are there to patrol the streets and keep us safe. Their main task is to focus on and help out citizens who are in need. Most of the time they are there to stop crime, but sometimes a few officers can go above and beyond and help out even the kids in the neighborhood. Before we continue, please take some time to subscribe to Dailydose, like and share this video with your friends. In this story, this police officer was at the right time and place when he got all friendly with a 9-year-old little girl. And when he knew that something bad had happened to the little girl, he knew that he had to help her. And so he did. Today, both lives are changed. Most of us don't realize who our real heroes are until we reach our maturity. But at such a young age of 9 years old, Klynn Scales has already found hers. She was looking forward to seeing this police officer pass by their house until she waved at him. Officer Jeffrey Colvin was patrolling the streets, and while he was doing so, he noticed that a little girl had kept on waving to him. At first, he was a little bit confused as to what was happening, but later on realized that the little girl was just very happy to be seeing him. There's a reason why Officer Colvin would constantly patrol the streets where Klynn was residing. And no, it's not to keep the outsiders away. Kansas City, Missouri in the 1990s wasn't the most idyllic of locations to reside in with children. At the time, Klynn didn't have an easy childhood. Her mother battled drug addiction, and she had 2 younger brothers that she took care of. At the early age of 9 years old, she stood as the mother to them, and this was around the time she saw Officer Colvin. The neighborhood where Klynn and her brothers were living was a neighborhood run by drugs and violence. It wasn't where you would imagine an innocent child growing up, and unfortunately, that was the reality of Klynn and her brother's situation. Klynn's mother was barely ever home because she was either working or doing drugs and going out with her friends. This meant that Klynn was stuck at home, fending for herself and raising her brothers. A truly very traumatic experience for a child. As the eldest, and being that her mother wasn't there and they had no father, Klynn bore all the responsibility of being a parent and a sister. It was heartbreaking for a little girl to be taking care of her brothers and assuming the role of a caregiver. She knew that they needed supplies and they needed to eat, so she did her best to find ways to manage their hunger. She would walk the streets of the dangerous neighborhood and go up to a local 7-Eleven to scour for essentials. The only problem was that she did not have any money to buy them. Klynn had to resort to stealing food and other essentials at the local 7-Eleven store near her house. She knew she needed this to survive, as her mother had already left them to fend for themselves. And it wasn't long until the police noticed the troubled child. Upon further investigation into Klynn, Officer Colvin had found himself especially concerned at the information he discovered. So whenever he would do his rounds, he would wave to Klynn, and Klynn would do the same with a big smile plastered onto her face. Officer Colvin's interactions with Klynn were always the highlight of their day. The daily exchange had become somewhat of a routine already, and this was their little way of saying that everything was okay and that Klynn was doing well with her brothers. According to Klynn, through all the bad situations, I would just picture him saying that he was here for us. Even throughout all the bad stuff that has happened, those words would come to me during the worst times of my childhood life, she said. And it wasn't before long that this promise would be kept. As a child who was already going through so much in her life, she saw Officer Colvin as the one person that I trusted in my life as a kid. This was especially true because seeing him would already make her day, and she would be comforted that he was always there watching and waiting for her. The exchange of waves had already become a routine for both of them. Officer Colvin would take the necessary precautions whenever he was in the immediate area and watch out for signs of distress. So, when Klynn had missed their daily greeting, he knew something wasn't right and that he had to check for himself. When Officer Colvin saw that Klynn wasn't there for their daily greeting, he grew wary. He knew that Klynn would never miss it, and something in his gut told him that there was something wrong and that he needed to know if she was okay or not. He pulled over and walked over to the house. When he got to the door, it was unlocked, so he let himself inside. He stepped inside, and his heart halted to a stop. Klynn was lying on the floor, barely able to breathe. He immediately carried Klynn and rushed her to the ER. Klynn was immediately received by doctors and nurses who quickly attended to her. Had Officer Colvin not discovered her sooner, she would have passed on. Luckily for her, Even though she might not have been that lucky with her family, she had a guardian angel to watch over her. All Officer Klin could do was wait until the doctors could tell him what was wrong with him. He had no idea what was happening, and it was hard for him not to imagine the worst out of the situation. He was waiting helplessly outside the emergency room. The doctors approached Officer Colvin, and they spoke to him to update him that Klin was okay and that she was going to recover soon. However, the devastating thing was when they told him what the cause of the incident was, a severe case of malnutrition. They told him that if he had not found her the way he did, it would all be too late. Officer Colvin sighed a breath of relief. He had already been so invested in the little girl that he had panicked a little when he saw her sprawled on the floor, just mere seconds of her life draining away. And when the doctors released Klin, she was turned over to her other family in Texas, and this would be the last time he would see her. Klin was never able to express her gratitude to Officer Colvin for saving her life, and because she has always been so mature about things, she was constantly conscious of the fact that she owes her whole life to the man who saved her. 20 years later, she mustered up the courage to finally search for him. One of the very first things she did was post all about her experience online. Though her intention was not for attention, the post garnered a lot of comments and likes. She noticed one comment from Jennifer Jones that would ultimately change her life. The woman who commented on her post happened to be a sergeant with the Kansas City Police, and she stumbled upon her post. She had told Klin she thought she knew the officer being described, and because her hunches were pointing to Officer Colvin, she emailed him. The email was then received by Officer Colvin. Though they had not met each other officially, she knew him. In the email, she told him of the post she saw online and explained that the girl was someone who lived down the street from the station growing up and was looking for her guardian angel. Just as Klin had never forgotten about the officer that saved her life, Officer Colvin, too, had never forgotten her either. According to him in an interview, "I had thought about her and wondered whatever happened with her." And just like that, he learned of the truth. This was by far the best news that he had received so far, and he was ecstatic. He was over the moon to find out that the little girl he rescued was still alive and thriving. He looked for the post, and sure enough, the story from Klin's perspective was there right before his eyes, and the only thing left to do was reunite with her. In the 20 years that had passed, Officer Colvin had his doubts, and he often wondered about what Klin might be doing and if she was okay. And because of that one post from Klin, both their lives were changed forever. They exchanged messages for a while and agreed to meet each other. As soon as Klin set eyes on Officer Colvin, she broke down into tears seeing her childhood hero again. She had never thought that it would happen, and so did Officer Colvin. After being so long in the force and dealing with more pains than gains, he was slowly losing his passion, but seeing Klin renewed his sense of purpose. When Officer Colvin saw Klin after 20 years, he was stunned. To think he would patrol the streets of her neighborhood before and then fast forward to him meeting her today, his passion for his job was reignited. He said, "Most times we go through our career not realizing we truly helped anybody out. I wondered if I was even in the right career path." He knew right then and there that without a doubt, he did make the right career choice. He was doubting himself because he just wasn't sure he was making any difference. And so, when Klin told him what she wanted to do, he was left speechless. Because Klin was so inspired by the difference Officer Colvin made for her, she has vowed to do the same for others. Inspired by her childhood hero, Klin told Officer Colvin what she really felt, and that she would also dedicate her life to protecting and looking after people. Klin applied to be a police recruit in Houston. She has made it a point to dedicate her life to doing good and right by the person who saved her. And Officer Colvin was in for another surprise. He was her childhood hero, and she wanted to pay tribute to him by asking him to attend her pinning ceremony. But that's not all. Klin did not come to the reunion empty-handed. She made sure that she had something to make Officer Colvin remember her, as if his memories were not enough. She still tried her best to honor him because of how much he had changed her life, and it wasn't only that. She was having second thoughts about asking him to attend her pinning ceremony, but something inside told her to go with it. And so, with all the courage she had, she asked him if he could do the honor of pinning her badge on graduation day. As soon as Officer Colvin heard Klin's invitation, he was touched and immediately said yes. According to his interview with ABC 13, she was emphatic that when she graduated, Not if, but when she graduated, that I would be the one to pin her badge on her, he said. It was not easy for Clyn to endure everything that she had to at such an early age, and she has beat all odds that were stacked against her, and Officer Colvin understood this. She had made a notable impression on him as a kid. He treated her as if she were his daughter, and this is such a priceless bond to have.